Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be unto all of you. Welcome to a new episode, which will be under a new topic. But remember that all these topics fall under the main topic, which is, do we teach effectively in our classrooms? The subtopic that we are going to discuss today is about assessment, or to be more precise, ongoing assessment. Assessment is a very broad topic. We'll try to talk about some aspects of it. Some aspect of assessment would say that, let's say that it begins, where does assessment begin? Can you help me with that? At school. What is the starting point of assessment here?
Diagnostic.
Diagnostic test. And from my perspective, this is the most difficult one that's done in school, because it needs expertise. It needs to have all the elements that we mentioned, particularly knowledge, concepts, skills. And remember, when we say diagnostic test, it doesn't mean necessarily that it is a written test, because you cannot measure all the tests, all the skills by a written test, particularly the oral skill. So, for example, the oral skill, so part of it can be oral. And when you do it oral, you can do it in different ways. You can make it by individual personal interview, or you can make it by a group interview. You get 3 or 4 students at a time, and you start talking to them, right? Talking to them about the things that you want to see, their fluency, you want to see the degree of pronunciation, you want to see whether they respond quickly or not. You see what I'm saying? Whether they initiate questions or not. So you want to see, to measure all this. That's why you have to have clear idea before you categorize your question. Even the skill may be or may need some sub-skills beneath it. For example, when you say that the oral skill, what do you mean by the oral skill? You want students to answer quickly. You want students to raise questions. What other assessments that we do? Yes, we do sometimes the daily assessment. Some teachers do daily quizzes. Either they do it by quiz, or when they notice what's happening from their children during the class, so they immediately record keeping. They have the record with them all the time. The page is open, and whenever they see something happening, so they would write beside the students what's going on, keeping the record, tracking the students. So after some time, you can track your students, what he or she has done. Of course, you do assessment by the exams that you do, whether they are annual exams, week exams, and again, these exams that you have made now, again, you should have in your background that these exams should fall into 3 categories, the categories that we mentioned: knowledge, concepts, and skills. All the time you keep this. And when you put the grades, don't say 30% for knowledge, 30% for concepts, 30% for skills. No. When you teach a language, especially in the early years, right, most of it would go to skills, particularly the oral skill. Now when they teach languages, modern languages, the first year is not a single pen or paper with the students. All of it is oral. After 1 year, they speak the language. Just in 1 year, they speak the language. So now you say, all of it will go to the skills, but the oral skill, you may give it 50%, you will give it 60% more. You can give writing only 10%. Reading, it depends on, you see what I'm saying? Now there's no knowledge. When you talk about teaching a language in the early years, there is no knowledge in that. Knowledge comes when grammar comes, when poetry comes, when, you see? So you have to analyze the nature of the subject that you teach. And this is exactly the same analysis will help you when you examine the new students. When you examine new students joining the school in first year primary, your exam's totally different, right, than the exam when they join the school at the age of 12, for example, join middle school or high school, right? Because you assume that they should have reached again Remember when we talked about standards? You assume that the students are joining you have covered these standards because they finished grade 6. So that's why when you design your exam, you design it according to this. And you see whether even you'll find some students are falling beneath the standards that you have. Standards is a very good tool to help you design the exams, and it helps you as well to see the progress of your students. So it has two functions here. Is this clear? Okay, so these exams that we're talking about, we call them summative assessment. You've heard about summative and formative. Summative assessment, exams that you make at the end of the year or the end of the month, or the summative assessment. Some data, yes. And I wish that when you design this notebook, that you take the results of the student, write lots of spaces for comments. You can even make comments after every column. That would be much better. There's no one specific standard of making this. It depends on you and depends on your background. You can say that, of course, after the concepts, you leave a place for comments. After skills, you leave a place for comments, because these comments are the thing that would give you clear idea. This student have done well in such a thing, but. So this needs to be in writing. So when you read these comments, you really know exactly where your students are. Not only that, try to imagine that you give this treasure, I call it treasure, to the teacher who will teach your student next year. Wow. You'd have something ready-made for him. Oh, this student was here, and then he came here, and he became here. And you see? We call this tracking. Tracking. Some schools would have a notebook for each child from the very beginning until the end. For 12 years, amazing information about the student. And this helps the teacher and the parents later, where they can guide the students. You'd better study computer. You'd better study biology. You better study, for example, history, because they see the progress and the skills of the student. If you depend on your memory, if there's not such a record, everybody would use his imagination. So it's a great record. There is another type that people call it formative assessment. In fact, it is not assessment. They call it formative assessment just to be in contradiction with summative assessment, but it is not assessment. It is what you do with these data. You got some information about the child. What are you going to do with it? It tells us that you have to embed it, to integrate it, to put it in your teaching. And you have to use this to change something in the curriculum. Forget about the curriculum now, talk about it. So it's not assessment, it is what you do with this data that you understood about the students. I understood that 25% of my students cannot pronounce these sounds, the kha and the ayn and the dal. I would take this and put it in the lesson plan. So I would address this under remedial work. Special classes, special hours for those students, or I would use this information even to use it not as an Arabic teacher, but I would give this information to the teacher of Quran. So we do more focus with these students on this. This is called formative. It's not assessment as you see, it's called formative assessment. Is this clear? Good. Any question, any comment? I need your input here.
Sheikh, in this manner, we will have to keep a record of the student's name behind the lesson plan, each lesson plan, keeping in mind where all the comments have to give for a particular child.
Yeah.
So we'll have to keep a record.
Students, I will answer this question after we take a break. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We had a question before the break which is about should we get all this information being in the lesson plan that we are doing for the coming lesson or for the coming week. There is a step before that you do that. The step before you do this is the analysis. You analyze the data. When you get an exam, you get some data. The data does not tell you anything. But when you analyze the data, when you start putting them together, okay, 25% of the students need focus on this. So I would write this analysis under the exam results for the whole class. Now you're talking about the whole class, not individual. So now this should reflect in the lesson plan. So when you design a lesson plan, on the top of it somewhere, I mentioned, and we'll talk about this later, an arrow coming from here, which tells us it's coming from previous exams, right? You would write here something that 25% need focus on or have a problem with these sounds. You identify this. And you can say here, how are you going to handle this? For example, you say that in the last 5 minutes or in the first 10 minutes, right? It depends on your strategy. How are you going to handle it? If you could not succeed in the coming week to handle this, so you extend it all the time, you have it with you, right? Until you cover it, until you handle this issue. Otherwise, it will remain a problem and you need to identify it here. I hope I answered this. Okay, any other question? No question from this part. Okay, now let's talk about something else. When you give students feedback, which is also related to the quality of assessment that you do. You made an exam, and here is the paper of the student, and the student sees himself getting, let's say, 15 out of 15. See the text. Excellent. Another student takes 13 out of 15. He made a mistake here and here, and you said 13 out of 15. Okay, and you gave the exam paper to the student. The first thing the student would say that I made a mistake here and I made a mistake here, but I don't know what is the correct answer for this. You see what I'm saying? He made a mistake because he doesn't know the correct thing. And I'm telling him this is wrong and this is wrong. So now he's left helpless. He doesn't know what to do. These are wrong. I know that my grade is 13, but I want to know the correct answer. Where is the correct answer? So either the teacher would write the correct answer, right? Or would guide the student, right? To do what to do. Look for this on page whatever. This would be better thing than you're giving him the correct answer. Or you can give him one correct answer here and leave him to discover the other, to search for the other. We don't see this. It's something that's missing from. Okay, now, the students all the time, tell yourself, if you don't tell your students what to do next, so there's a lot of information missing for the student. What to do next. So, some teachers say excellent or very good or would give, but the student takes excellent and he has 2 mistakes. So how does this go with excellent? Yeah, so sometimes we make contradictory something funny when we go through this. Or he doesn't know what to do next. Now he wrote, particularly in comprehension, in writing. When you write something, most of the teacher focus on grammatical mistakes. And then they give the grade. So it's the main concern is to focus on the grammatical mistake. The students would study and focus on grammar, The feedback is not clear. For example, the teacher would say that, okay, you have very limited grammatical mistakes, but your style is restricted by such and such. He would describe whatever. You've written an article, but the introduction was not sufficient to give the reader a background. So next time, so now he's the teacher is describing what the student has done. So what's missing in it, and would tell the student next time I need you to enlarge the introduction. For example, to talk about this and this and this. Now, this is something. This is something. This is where you can benefit from the feedback. This is at least you tell yourself that the teacher read it well. But next time, I think you need to add a paragraph to make the body of the article larger than this. And I think it would be good if you do this or this or this. This is what we expect. This is very high quality feedback. And this is missing from all. And you can do this whether the student is talking about Islam, whether they're talking about hadith, anything that the student writes, they need such a help. This is the meaning of being a teacher, not being a ticker. Tick, 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 excellent, outstanding, that's it. The students are not learning. The more details you give, and you can advise the students, please write on one page and skip the other so you can write your feedback, not even in the bottom, right? So let them write on the left and you give feedback on the right or vice versa. So you have a whole page to play with. I know that this is a time-consuming issue, but this is where you are rewarded by Allah. You are giving personal tips. You are a counselor here. You need to do this, you need to do this. And the following lesson, you see, or the following article, you see whether the student has followed these steps or not. Or you can ask him, rewrite the whole article and include these remarks in them. And you see whether he understood, because you need to see him understanding what you have said. Once the student does this once or twice correctly, he will continue doing this forever. Am I clear on that? This is a very high quality level of teachers. When I go to your class and I see you doing this, when I see the notebooks of the students and I see that you're doing this, I will hire you to work in the States. I'm serious, if you want. But this is the quality of the teachers we have. How many of you do this? I see no hands are raised. Yes. Oh, now 2 hands are raised. Alhamdulillah, 3 hands are raised. We need every teacher in an Islamic school to do this. It takes some time, takes some training, takes some guidelines, but we have to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. And I have, alhamdulillah, great hopes in India that we'll see lots of changes in India because of you. Alhamdulillah. In many Arab countries, we've seen the quality of the teachers. And we see the notebook of the students. There is nothing except ticking. The most of them would write praising word. Wonderful, outstanding. But even there is nothing that would help the student what to do next. The most important thing is what to do next. Okay, this is a key word that we learned today. Yes?
Brother, when we analyze the answer of the children, it's not only that when we cover up the area of what to do next, but we also have to mention the strengths of the answer of the child.
Yes,
mention
I
the
said that.
strengths
So I
in
said
detail
that.
and the weakness.
I said that you write the strength, you've done this, good, good, good. You're missing this. And you can do it in the paper that you wrote here, right? You draw a line here. The top one is what you did well. So you can take that, right? And then what you need to do next is in the bottom. It depends. Every teacher has his own way of doing it. There's not one form of doing it. It depends. We can design one form together, yes, but somewhere beside us here, there's a better people, right? They designed a better one than us. So it's endless process. But you can make a form for your whole school, by the way. If you can come up with a form, a group of you gather together to make a form that applies to all subjects, or at least to the same department. The Department of English or the Department of Arabic or the Department of Physics would have a form that can be used by all teachers. So you can come up with that. It becomes very easy, and instead of one teacher doing something different. Yes, comments, questions, okay? If we think that we covered it, tell me what you are going to do next. Tell me about it. Next week, when you go to school, what is the first step that you have? Now you have plenty of things to do. I don't know which one you're going to begin with about this issue.
I would just like to comment on the assessment.
On
Assessment.
assessment, yes.
Like you spoke about assessing the work, what the children have done. I would also include the behavioral assessment in my
No doubt, no doubt. I wouldn't put it under assessment on the paper that I mentioned, but I put it on this notebook. Somewhere in this notebook, some column here would be about the behavior of the student. And this is very important if he has a behavior issue, right? You can put it here vertical, and when he improves or remains as is, you say that he remained as is, or this increased, or this did not increase. So you should put something like that, because this would give you clear idea, and not even just behavior issues. Why not medical issues? Student is always sick. He's almost absent 3 days a week, whatever. And you have to put the attendance here, because it gives you all these pieces together, gives you a clear idea. So not just behavioral issues, but even medically or socially. You can classify socially with behavior. It's up to you.
Completion of work.
Or completion of work. Whatever, you write a place for giving notes. He does not complete work. You can make it in a column here. And so you can tick, 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 tick the days that he doesn't complete the work. This is the best thing that any school can have. Best document that helps any teacher to see this, to get an idea about this. This, when the parent comes to you and you share this information with them, it's impossible for the teacher to be a liar, because they will see other students. It will give the parent clear idea about and they discuss it. I've seen this improvement. Perhaps somebody was helping him and he's no longer helping him now. And you try to analyze and discuss the reasons why he is going up or going down or remaining in the same place. This would be good material. I said that. Again, this is something very important, and you need to involve this, of course, in your flower or in your fish or in the other. Yes?
Sheikh, I needed to ask a question regarding the feedback form, where we tick on, for example, the one which you gave, the to tick and to say where he needs to work. This can be given to the parents as well, a copy of it, so that the parents get to know?
Why not? In the exam. And some people, yes, would say that the parent should sign here.
And get it back.
Of course, you get it back. So again, you should do. People do it differently, but this is better than the ones who don't do it. This is the end of this episode, and I hope we meet in other episodes very soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Little baby, pure and small, He created you, He created us all. Hush, little baby, don't you fear, we're never alone when Allah's so near. Hush, little baby, breathing so calm, He'll protect us all and keep us from harm. Hush, little baby, still and serene, you are a Muslim, Islam's your deen. Hush, little baby, pure and small,